The topic that we've selected is the Holodomor and emerging technologies, the U of M experience. To give you an overview a little bit, if you can move to the next aspect, sort of an outline, a little bit on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the meaning of human rights education, and the emphasis in the acronym over here is HRE, not just HR, but education. Some of the issues, social justice and new programs that are on the horizon, the rapid growth of educational technology, not to be confused with technology education, the needs of our Ukrainian bilingual programs, especially in this case in the province of Manitoba. Our summer institute that was offered in July 4th to the 15th, sort of an overview of what had transpired and kind of things that we had put into place to help our teachers and the individuals that participated, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those work samples. And then summary and challenges, and maybe open for questions if that could be of help to you as I move through. Basically, we're saying yes, we're referring to the human rights aspects, and it's becoming much more prevalent now in our surrounding. A lot of emphasis has been given to those particular aspects and so on. And we've also added here the charter, the Canadian Charter that we have, the Charter of Rights. But we've put in the Ukrainian edition so that you can actually see that it's available also in Ukrainian. So if you're going to teach that particular aspects, you should be aware of that. And so there is that dimension, that push for the human rights setting. I'm not going to read all the definitions here for you. There's a number of them that are out there, but this one in particular, the Tibbetts one that she put out, that it's not merely about valuing and respecting, as we know, but also about advocacy to guarantee these particular conditions. All right? And then there's the Amnesty International one as you move through also. So there's a variety of them that are emphasizing now the human rights, but human rights, and the key word here is also education. All right, so you will see literature now specifically dovetailed to human rights education, and people writing on educational issues related to human rights. Social justice issues also very apparent and on the horizon, and very much in the 21st century, and a lot of people juggle human rights, social justice, and so on, play on terminology and so on. But in the long run, we are basically coming up on the same wavelength in terms of the need to teach those particular topics. There's a variety of specialty programs, and I believe there was a student here yesterday that was doing a BA or a bachelor's in peace and justice that was actually sitting next to me among one of the 3 students that Mark had brought in. She was in her 2nd year. So there is a trend, even at, for example, University of Winnipeg. They have a bachelor program in peace and justice, I believe. University of Manitoba has a doctorate program also in the same settings. There's a there's graduate programs and undergraduate programs in those particular settings. And these are appearing across US, Canada. Now, I don't know about Europe, but I do know US and Canada, there's a number of them that are in place now. And that would be a good place to target as you move through. All right? The other item on the horizon is also the Canadian Museum of Human Rights that at that time was under construction, and I think they were just beginning to put the framework in place and so on. And so that's another item in terms of importance and why we need to look at these particular aspects. And the last item that you see on the PowerPoint presentation there is the public schools system itself. So it's the public school and the Catholic schools. You're seeing the concept of genocide, human rights being adopted by schools also as a theme, rather than just a topic that is given for 1 week. Next slide. The museum itself, I had to go out and get a few pictures. They were still not finished in terms of the top. and also the need and the importance for us to continue to advocate and to stand up for the Ukrainian dimensions that need to be highlighted in galleries, the famine and the internment issues and so on. Next slide. There's also a concern with regards to technology and pedagogy. And being as an educator, I'm interested in the technology and pedagogy aspect. I don't consider myself an expert. I know Professor Sudabin is a historian, so I am not a historian. So I'm not an expert in the field. It doesn't mean that I don't understand and don't know the area, but as an expert, it's a different ballgame. But when it comes to technology and pedagogy, where you've been working or have been working in 30, 40 years, you have a better understanding of what directions and kind of emphasis that we should be giving. So on the left-hand side, if you look, that's where your children, your adolescents, walk with those items in their hands. And sometimes I refer to my students as they're very religious because they're always heads down, reading in class or sending text under the tables, and they believe that you don't notice them, but we actually see them because so I refer to them, they're a very religious group with me. So you see that happening on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is the chalk and talk instructor or pedagogue delivery of content, on the chalkboard and so on. So that's basically changing the setting in which we're functioning dramatically as we interact with our students. Next slide. It's also, and I've put down over here a quantum growth in educational technology. I mean, just look at the software that you have bought for maybe Word a few years ago and how fast things are changing and the various, you have no choice, right? You have to change the technology, keep pace and so on. So that's the emphasis over here that we're trying to incorporate. And also, as I mentioned before, there's a need for our Ukrainian bilingual programs, the teachers that we have in the province of Manitoba, that need to be serviced. They need help basically in the delivery. They need some tools. They need some information in terms of how to package and how to deliver various content much more effectively with the new technology that is occurring around us. The slides that you see are slides of students that we had over the summer in that particular course as we moved through. So on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, are slides of various presenters. One, in this particular case, via Skype or teleconference. We had two possibilities. So if you're a teacher and you need access to specialists, you don't have to necessarily fly them in. They could be online on Skype, or they can be on teleconference if you're using, in our case, in a university environment. And so, or in this case, I believe there's a slide there with Vala, when she basically gave a presentation in regards to the Manitoba curriculum on the right-hand side. Next slide. There's also a gap between youth and the traditional classroom delivery that we have. And so we wanted to create a little better atmosphere, a better understanding of the tools and what's available to have a greater impact and also keep their attention and motivation, right? Kids are exposed daily to Hollywood, your television, to various mediums. They come in with various technology, which is ubiquitous after a while. And yet, individuals, sometimes teachers can't adjust very rapidly, or sometimes the students know more than the teacher. And so it creates a problem in terms of hesitating, wanting to incorporate various technology. So here's our response, the next one. July 4th to 15th, and I put down 2013, it's a mistake, it's 2011. We basically created a 2-week intensive institute to try to address partially some of those particular concerns. I'm only going to focus on the Holodomor. We focused on Canadian internment and also the Holodomor as part of the process, because we tried to combine those two topics. And it was, I believe, the first time in Canada or even the US that such a course was put together that focused on Canadian internment and Holodomor, focusing from an education and educational technology perspective for that particular time. So you had a history, you had culture, you had digital media, you had arts, you had pedagogy. So we tried to touch on various sectors and to try to provide a picture, basically, of what can be done to deliver that particular content, which is the topic itself. Those are just some of the readings that we had available for the participants. Next slide. There's a few students missing over here because we had people that only attended for 1 week rather than 2 weeks, and so they're not in the picture. But it gives you at least some idea of the student population that we had, comprised of pre-service teachers, people that are currently teaching, in service also, individuals. We had one librarian, I believe, at that time. And also we had 2 doctorate students, one from Nigeria and one from Pakistan. In the group, there was, I believe, only 3 or 4 Ukrainians. The majority were all non-Ukrainians. And currently, I actually sit on the Nigerian Students' Doctorate Committee. So Ukrainian Holodomor and genocide issue is actually touched in that doctorate study dissertation that he's doing. So that gives you a little picture, a little bit about that institute. It was teaching the Ukrainian famine, genocide as one. We required students. The next, these are just some of the goals we had in mind, basically. We had roundtables on various issues: social justice, human rights, Holodomor, the role of technology, pedagogy, teaching horrendous events and how it affects individuals, and so on. We had individual projects and group projects dealing with preparing lesson plans, teaching various themes, such as the Holodomor, producing a film guide, analyzing various instructional materials, and we also recommended various websites. For some of the graduate students, we also had they had to do some scholarly research papers and so on. So we also used Comic Life, Webquest, daily blogs on a daily basis in the process itself. These are just some examples, and we'll show you some of the outcomes, basically, of some of the areas. And next. Summer Institute sample reading continued. Those are some of the books that we had available for students. We didn't require students to buy books. We had a library table on the side, and then if they wanted to, they can select the ones that they wanted to look into or read into more in depth. A lot of the material was available through handouts and web setting itself. We also had Bill C-459. And I think you need to have that on hand, and I believe I gave copies also to Valentina Curricula. The legislation, the Canadian legislation that was put in by James Bazan, and we had him also as a speaker. He's the one that actually spearheaded that particular legislation, the Canadian one, and the students had a chance to actually hear him speak the behind-the-scenes activities of that particular bill, and also how the Russians, just when you thought it was all over, when the Russians tried basically to stop this particular bill, and they've actually approached them. From what I'm hearing, I think similar things happen in Quebec for the provincial ones, I believe. So keep in mind the activity of the individuals north of Ukraine seems to continue. And we must be doing the right thing because it does aggravate them a little bit itself. Next, content experts that we had, just the next slide. I'm giving you just the ones for the Holodomor. I'm not emphasizing the ones that we had for internment of Canadian. So we had John Weens. He's our former dean of education. He's a Mennonite, but his parents are from Ukraine. And he was our dean, actually, so he was very receptive to the concept and very much supportive. He came and talked about what is social justice to the class. We had Garris to talk just about an overview of Ukrainian history in Canada, the pioneers settling and so on, and a little bit about Ukraine, just to set a stage a little bit. We had Professor Serbin to talk about Holodomor and Lemkin. We had him on Skype. He was unable to be there physically, but at least he interacted with our students via Skype. We had Valentina Kuriliu also via Skype, online, and an opportunity to interact. We had Professor Ken Osborne. How do you teach social justice, and how do you attack that particular aspects? We had James Bazan come in physically, basically meet with the class and talk about the political issues and social justice. And that's where I emphasized we were interested not just in the act itself and the legislation, but the behind the scene issues, so that the students could see a real picture of how difficult it is to put legislation through on a federal level in that particular case. And James Bazan is in our province of Manitoba, and so he was readily available and very much positive, basically, outlook in terms of wanting to participate. Sample topics we examined, if we can go to the next one. We looked at M technology, which stands for mobile technology. Right? We looked at Cosmic Zoom, NFB, a National Film Board. It's about an 8-minute film. And we also examined various teaching materials. We also looked at Animal Farm. But when we talked about M technology, that means we spent a little bit of time on the handhelds on your smartphones, which are in everybody's hand, and everybody had access to these particular things, how to use them, how to make searches, even word searches, or how to use it for PowerPoint presentations, and so on. So we helped with that particular aspects. We also wanted the individuals to have a more critical analysis and perspective of everything that came through the class and any readings that they've done. And Cosmic Zoom is an example of a film produced by the National Film Board, actually, which starts from the Earth and then zooms into space. And so gradually just progresses. And the intent and the item here that we wanted to emphasize is that when you are analyzing, you start small, go wider, or the opposite. But you need to do a critical analysis of what is transpiring as you examine that. We looked at various materials and methods also for teaching horrendous materials, especially to not adults, but the adolescents and children. Which may be sensitive to some of the information. And also we looked at Animal Farm, and I think I'll show you a picture of that later on. It's important that you understand Animal Farm, and we put in over here it does touch on human rights and extension of Holodomor. We put in a little question mark over here, but in fact, the first translation was done in Ukrainian. And so in the introduction, we wanted to make sure that our clientele, the participants in the course itself, had access to both documents and were able actually to see the content and the context in which it was written for, and how it relates to indirectly to the famine or directly to the famine in terms of the kind of animal portrayed basically in the document itself. Speakers in action on the next one. So here you have James Bazan on the left, interacting with the class. On the right-hand side, you have Dr. Joanna Black, also, which we asked to come and talk to our students. She teaches art education and digital media. And so her presentation was on art and how paintings and art, just as you have in the exhibits over here, can be used for teaching purposes, and how it's a good example of incorporating that particular concept in teaching. And so she was a specialist in the art area, and she shared her methodologies and a variety of examples, of historical examples, generic ones, with regards to what's available out there. Next one. We looked also at cinema, music, and artistic propaganda. And this is where we wanted people to be careful of what they look at. It's like going through Google, right, and doing a search. Doesn't mean that everything that is out there is good. You have to look and filter things with a critical eye. And so the intent was over here to show some examples of how the Soviet government was using various propaganda tools to indicate that there was nothing happening and how happy everything is occurring in the Soviet Union. And so we had given a chance to people to listen to the ballet by Shostakovich Dmitri, 1932. It's called The Bright Streams. And it shows the Soviet insistence of putting a happy face on life in a collective farm during the famine years. And the ballet finale, the finale itself, on stage appear giant fruits and vegetables. So, you know, who's worrying about famine? So here you have the Soviet state actually mandating, enforcing, and imposing on various individuals to propagate a sort of positive picture of what was transpiring in contrast to what the famine was occurring in front of us. So we used music. There's also a North Star. This is an American movie or film actually, put out in 1940s, and the various Hollywood actors which impact. Now keep in mind the Americans and Stalin that time were friends. And so in 1940, this American film shows how Hollywood tried to show the positive side of the newfound Soviet allies. All right? And the impact becomes even much more important because they're using now Hollywood actors at that particular time or age to make their message how beautiful and how everything is positive. There's Yuli Mentes also, 10-minute short symphonic poem, 1932, about the Dnieper Dam, how they built this dam and how everything is rosy and flowing and so on. And so we used a few examples. If you can go to the next one. We also had a chance to look at Nikolai Mayakovsky's 1932 Symphony number 12. It's called The Collective Farm. Movement number 1, subjugated peasants before the revolution. Movement 2, struggle for new life. Movement 3 is a joyous festival, isolated, reminiscent of the past and how jubilant this whole issue is. So here you have basically propaganda, as full-blown propaganda through art, through music, through operettas, and so on. What was nice is Lana, when we knew that Lana was going to join us, and it was actually July the 4th. So what do we do on July 4th in the US? They celebrate, right, their independence, right? And so we, when talking to Dennis, he says, you know, it would be beautiful if we dissected a little bit the overture that he used from Tchaikovsky, and get the students to listen critically to what is really there, rather than just listening to music that impacts on how they put that across. And so we played that. So we called it Things Are Seldom What They Seem. This is the 1812 overture by Tchaikovsky. By the way, he is Ukrainian father, French mother. So in that theme or that overture, there's basically La Marseillaise. There's God Save the Tsar. There's religious church themes in there. All right? And this is what they use to promote 1776 in the US, with all the cannons and so on. All right. There's also, I'll just put that over here as an extra here. Tchaikovsky wrote the Symphony Number 2. He named it Ukrainian because of its Ukrainian folk themes. He wrote the Mazepa, but it was based on Pushkin's poem, which puts Mazepa in a negative perspective and so on. But his family did own a state in the Ukraine. Right? And so if you're going to see Tchaikovsky's ballets now, you should know, there's a Ukrainian dimension, and somewhere along the line, the Russians have basically turned them into a Russian. So we have to look at that particular aspect. Next item. We also looked at emerging technology. I mentioned a few. Some of them is the smart board. We're not going to go into the details of that, but more and more of our schools and teachers are using smart boards, sort of like a touch screen technology. And so if you go to the next slide, you'll actually see this is a class we had with our students on how to use the smart board. So you know, in the short period of time, 2 weeks, everything's intensive. There's no way to give you all the skills, but at least it was an opportunity to make you aware that, hey, this exists. If you wanted to spend a little more time on that, then you can actually familiarize yourself with it. Next one. This one, I think, will be interesting for you. We used a software called Comic Life. It's available online, comiclife.com. It's free for the first month. After that, you have to buy it. I think it's $25. So it's cheap, but it's very effective, does the job for us and for what we wanted to put across. We use that to teach. In fact, what you're doing is you're creating comics. So I think, Valentine, you were talking about graphic novels and comics. This is what we used to put that particular activity or concept across. You could use that in elementary schools and also in high schools. And I also used it in my university classes actually too. So it works at all levels depending on how you want to function and what is it that you want to put across. Next one. So we did a little bit of scripting with them also in terms of concept, how to put it across and how to use it. Now I'm giving you some examples here of graphic novels. All right, so you've got a graphic novel over here. Now, on this particular PowerPoints, we have gone to the Creative Commons site. You see the text on the bottom, which means they're not copyrighted. You can use them. I think we at the university are always brought sort of to our attention that keep in mind copyright, pictures, paintings, music, and so on. So on the left-hand side, you have the book or the textbook, and on the right-hand side you have a graphic novel. Kids, how many of you kids you've seen reading comic books, right? So I mean, I know I've done that many times, and there are history ones and so on. Can we go to the next one? So there are various genres. I'm not going to go into all the details here, but this one over here is on romance and so on. Next. There are some on classics, also aspects. The next one talks about also superheroes. Right? So if you're looking at superheroes and so on, so there's some examples there. The next one, science fiction also. Next one, this one over here actually was done in our science, by science teachers to teach science concepts. This is, it's called Birds, Balloon, and Flying Machines. Adventure Aboard Airship, Bernoulli. And it's for grade 6 science curriculum. So it's a supportive, but it's a graphic, it's a comic book actually, teaching concepts. Next one. This is Louis Riel, talking about history, all right, via comics. Next. This is historical, and this is the French version of Holodomor. I believe that one was put out in France or in Italy, I'm not sure. To double check here, yeah. But it is, in fact, available. Now, you may be asking yourself and saying, well, comic books, you know, come on. Is that really a possibility? Is that really academically acceptable and viable? Let's move on to the next one. Well, here you have the survivor's tale. That's the Holocaust, right? And it actually won the Pulitzer Prize. So if we go to that extent and backtrack on teaching that particular methodology, then in fact we're saying, look, it seems to be working, it's acceptable, depending on how you want to put it across, and therefore it has some value and some teaching possibility for your students or the clientele that you're going to be interacting with. All right. This one over here actually shows you the page of Comic Life. That's when you open up Comic Life, that's that page that you see appearing. All right. So you have all your icons. On the right-hand side, you'll have your pictures. It seems a little bit like a Word that you're doing. It's very easy to use. And you also have your frame that you're going to be working with. And in order to get your individuals to interact and talk, you have your talking balloons at the bottom, which you can actually just drag and stretch. They'll make all kinds of noises. And then you can write text. And it also writes in Ukrainian, because I've produced them in Ukrainian too. So it's available in English, but if you have the keyboard, you can change your keyboard, you can make it in Ukrainian. All right? These are examples now of students' work that attended our session. This is one that was created by an elementary teacher dealing with the Holodomor, so you can actually see what it looks like. All right, so here it's the same creation. I just took a few shots, a few examples here, but she also used a software called Portrait Illustration Maker. So she actually put herself, the teacher, the creator, put herself into the cartoon character. All right, so she's using two software. She's using Comic Life, and she's using the Portrait Maker, and inserted herself into the document. In this way, she's able to make the material a little bit more interesting. This is a student that did Shevchenko. Now, by the way, remember I mentioned to you at the beginning we had students that were not Ukrainian. So when we talked about Shevchenko and human rights, the first question that came is, who is Taras Shevchenko? And so we had a monument in Winnipeg and visitation possibilities, and the students decided on their own, basically, to actually create a Comic Life element over here, a program, and actually go to the Shevchenko monument in Winnipeg, and you can actually see her discussion all the way. It's sort of like a time travel element, and she's using the cell phone. If you look on the center, on the right-hand side, she's using the cell phone actually to access the internet information about Shevchenko. All right, and she's put herself into that picture. We also incorporated Webquest. We dealt pre-production, production, and post-production. So how do you organize yourself ahead of time? How do you produce it, and how do you and everything that's involved in post-productions. I've included some of the websites over here where you can actually utilize to teach with. You can use this in your classrooms, in the elementary levels and also in the high school levels. Very much creative based and web-based technology. All right, that means it's online. And so if you're talking about utilizing and teaching online, then you should be using Webquest. All right, and it's like having a lesson plan online with all the resources and information on there. So I'm giving you a few sites where you can use. Our students used Zunnel.com and Webquest.org. So there's a variety of them up there. You just type in Webquest, and there's a number of them that appear. And some of them may have a time limit in terms of how long you can use it. Sometimes it's a month. Then after that, you have to buy it or buy into it. And there are some that are free. I believe Zunnel.com is free. Some of them also have printed the Webquest. You can actually print them and have it in print format, and then the students access the websites that you've created. You can actually create a website using Webquest and create a memorial, design and create a memorial of Holodomor, including the blueprint, including the layout, and as part of it, actually asking them to do a PowerPoint presentation on marketing the memorial to a community or to a city. So there's a variety of ways of approaching that. All right, next one. I'm just giving you the individual's name, Bernie Dodge, Tom Marsh. That's SDSU, standing for San Diego State University. San Diego State University, back in '95, implemented that particular concept. And so it deals with inquiry. It incorporates, interacts with various internet sites. You could incorporate and insert multimedia, and I believe Mark did a presentation that actually gives you that possibility also to do that. So you can use PowerPoint, films, components. It has various introductions. Usually there's at least 6 introductions, sometimes 6 subtitles or titles, components or parts. So you have introduction, task, process, evaluation, conclusion, credits, and teacher's page. Next one. There's also he refers to that as a taxonomy rather than a taxonomy. Usually it's like writing objectives, and I've seen, you should be able to explore or to familiarize yourself. Sometimes we tend to write objectives at the lowest level of a taxonomy, and we forget that there's an analysis and a creative level. And so the same thing happens for the Webquest. There are a variety of approaches and types of Webquests. All right, so if you want to do consensus building, a scientific, if you want to do analytic, you can go to that particular site that I've given you previously also and know how to do them also. All right, next one. Sample student work. So here you have examples of our Samson students' Webquest on Holodomor. This one was done by Candy and Priya. All right, now these are non-Ukrainian students. And so you have the Holodomor Webquest on the top, the settings, the headings. I've cropped the other one and gives you another example of another different websites that has them. Next slide deals with blogs. So we did blogs every day, and we asked them to reflect and comment on at least 2 or 3 other students' blogs. All right, so that was done. Can we move to the next one? These are samples of students' blogs and NiceNet management, so you have an idea of what was done. The next one, technology, right? Basically saying, look, they're all around you. You can't ignore it. I know some school divisions say we'll ban them, or we don't want to see them around, or we can't use them, but more and more are integrating smartphones and mobile technology as part of the process, and so on. All right, okay? The iPad also is moving along. Now, we haven't used the iPad during the course itself. Next one. We've also used projectors. I used the iPad Touch and also the handheld projector that you see right here. It's just a little tiny projector. In fact, the PowerPoint presentation could be done very easily without this projector and an iPod Touch. So how to use technology to change settings in small groups. This is good for about 10, 12 students. In fact, when I went to a conference in Greece, I just went with my iPod Touch and my handheld projector, nothing else. And my PowerPoint was right on that. So I didn't need anything else. Not even electricity, because everything is functioning. Next. I was going to put you on a SurveyMonkey.com. Basically what it is I usually do all the talking, but in school when I teach, I usually put a few PowerPoint slides and then I say, it's your turn, right? And so I usually would ask, now that if you followed me on a certain concept or ideas, you stop the PowerPoint and say, it's your turn. And I want you to go to that particular site and access it. Now I haven't given you any codes here, but if you go to SurveyMonkey, it's free for the basic. It's a little more expensive for the right-hand side, the advanced, but you can use the free portion and have questions, items, tests, surveys, whatever you want to do. So if I wanted to know how many listened particular questions that I had on the Holodomor, I know I've put 5 questions up there, but via your cell phone, access that particular sites, right? And I will give you the code. And I could actually visually show you over here the graph as you're entering your data. And we can talk about it. All right, so it's another tool. Or I can ask half of you to use your cell phone and this half use your mobile computers, or do it by hand, right? For the exam, do this one by hand and this one by phone. So utilizing that technology to your advantage. So just to wrap it up a little bit, a summary. This is just one example of how we brought educators to explore human rights issues, focusing on content, context, technology, and how to teach pedagogy. All right? Within a Canadian case study, which was basically the internment, but in your case over here, I talked about the Holodomor. All right? Students worked on various projects. We gave them some tools, some suggestions. And it also enabled them to actually create, design, and develop various activities, and also have a network of resources available in the process itself. Дякую.